is art part of it?
I would say it's people are art curious and art adjacent and creative by nature, and I don't know that it would be like a hard, like art definition. These are just big thinkers and creative folks.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I put a little a few of my artwork together. I didn't know if that would be interesting, but or not. So I can just jump into regeneration too.
I think we're interested in art for sure. I am, and storytelling and sense making and regeneration, and so the whole smorgasbord.
Okay, well, so I'll just do a quick run through there. I'm just do a screen share. I'll just show you a little bit about what I've been up to. Get this out of the way. Let me know when you see something.
We can see it now. Yeah.
My screen. Yeah, I just thought I'd run through and show you some of my illustrations. Sir Pastel. Oops, seems to be hung up. Oh. Some of the kids' books, National Geographic, on dirt.
You want to say a little bit about the context for some of them?
Oh, yeah, I just didn't want to spend too much time on it. So this is, let me go back. This one was a book about dirt. And so it's part of a series called Jump Into Science. And so I look at science as an adventure. So I try to take the reader on an adventure. And I created characters for each of these books that would be, like this one is the Sandpiper Sleuth. And it goes looking at sand all over the world and how sand is made and where you find it. And this one's on volcanoes, and this guy is a volcano Vulcan dragon. And that was for another one. And these are just sort of funny little guys. But one thing I wanted to mention that might be pertinent for you guys is nature journaling. And I find it so incredible. I was drawing this teasel plant, and you can see where the leaf attaches to the stem. There's a little kind of like pocket. And when I looked into the pocket, it was filled with water. And there was a spider that had made a web right above the pocket. And so it knew that insects were going to go to the pocket of water to drink, and then it could snag them. And I wondered if this plant is somewhat carnivorous, because insects would fall into the water and drown. So when you start drawing things, it really gives you a better understanding of how they work, and it really piques your curiosity. Some more nature journaling. So stop this guy. And then a little bit about, can you see the regeneration, or do I have to do a separate screen share?
There.
What was that?
You can
Now
see
we can
it.
see regeneration.
You can see it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. So Ugo was asking me to talk a little about regeneration, and I was thinking about it as I was weeding. And I was weeding some majorum, and it had the dead stalks from last year. And I was cutting out the dead stalks. And then I go, wow, these dead stalks are really important because they're helping hold up the new stalks. And I got to thinking about how we as humans have some sort of preconceived ideas of what looks right aesthetically. And so we want to get rid of all the dead stuff. But in fact, dead is really important in regeneration. And these dead dried stalks that were really very solidly firm were important for the regeneration to happen. And I think that's something really interesting to think about. So, so in biology, regeneration is a process of renewal, restoration, and tissue growth that makes genomes, cells, organisms, and ecosystems resilient to natural fluctuations or events that cause disturbance or change. Every species is capable of regeneration from bacteria to humans in different ways. And I suppose we all have different definitions. And I guess there's a lot of people on the group, so we probably can't go through everyone. But I thought if we have time, maybe we can have a discussion about what that is to people. Because when I think of the term regeneration in biology, I usually think about growing a new body part. Or I think of it on an ecosystem level, you know, regeneration of ecosystems. But I thought I'd just pick a few examples here of how nature regenerates. So Tereopsis Durrini is a jellyfish that uses cell differentiation, and it can cycle back and forth between adult and larval state. So theoretically, it's never going to die unless somebody eats it. So, you know, if it needs to, it just couldn't go back to a juvenile. You know, what a cool thing, huh? Probably everyone's heard about the starfish that can regenerate body parts. It can lose a leg and then grow a new leg, or it can actually grow a whole new disc, which is sort of like the main of the jellyfish from a leg. So that's pretty amazing. This is a tardigrade. Maybe you've heard of these guys. They use cryptobiosis and they use anhydrobiosis, where they can completely desiccate, and then they can live in this state of anhydrobiosis for 120 years, and then you drop a water on them and they spring back to life.
What kind of creature?
So this is, oh, a tardigrade. Yeah, they're little microscopic creatures, and they live in moss, but they're probably on every continent. And they've shot them into space. They can live without atmosphere. They can live at absolute zero. They can live at, you know, probably 500 degrees. In fact, just recently they put them in a gun and tried shooting them. And I should have looked up what this, you know, the speed of the impact. Because they were wondering if they could be on asteroids. What was it?
It was 2,000 miles an hour, Nan.
1,000 miles an hour. Yeah, because they were trying to figure out, could they have come in on asteroids? You know, could that have been the beginning of life?
Yeah. Nan, what is cryptobiosis?
Well, cryptobiosis is sort of like crypt is sort of like dead. They appear to be dead. They get into this, they call it a TUN, T-U-N, stage where they just totally desiccate and lose water. And then they can spring back to life. And anhydrobiosis means that they're losing water.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cute little guys. I love them. And hydras, if you cut them in half, they can create two new ones. And this cute little guy, so they have these pluripotent cells that allow them to even grow a new spine. So you can cut off part of their spine and they'll grow it back again. They'll grow legs. They're one of the most regenerative creatures that we know of. It's also pretty immune to cancer. So ecosystem regeneration, that's probably a lot of what we think about when we think of regeneration, at least I do. How this was Mount St. Helens. The forest was covered with ash, and now it's beautiful and green again. In the case of fires, the ponderosa pinecone won't actually germinate unless there's been a fire. And so that's its way of regenerating the forest. It needs to have a certain amount of heat to open up. And then micro remediation would be another way of of regeneration because it's sort of cleaning up toxic chemicals, heavy metals. It can remove contaminants from the soil by the mycorrhizae. And I think something really important is to honor the cyclical processes. Like I was saying, with that death is just such an important part, and that maybe I think that we as humans need to look at death in a different way, because it's really just sort of changing states. So that was all I had on regeneration. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add or comments about it?
Well, when you mentioned our desire to get rid of the dead stuff and to, you know, sort of aestheticize things and make them look right, but that the old wood and, you know, the nurse log and the old stocks are play an important role. And actually what I started to think about was how does that apply to the cultural moment we live in and the stories we're telling about now, and, you know, sort of what we've done wrong till now and what we want to change and do right in the future, and different models for thinking about regenerative culture, and what is the role of the deadwood, right? This is kind of getting philosophical, I guess, but that's where it made me go in my head, was what is the bridging continuity structural piece, or whatever it looks like? How does that play into the story we're telling about regenerative futures?
That's exactly what I was thinking about too. And that's why I thought we should look at death different, and maybe, you know, look at it in a metaphoric way too.
Sure.
And I was curious, just maybe if a few people want to share stories, are there times in your life when you felt like you regenerated, and what caused that to happen?
That answer is always nature, like going out to nature and being there and being as intimate with nature as I can regenerates my soul and helps my body as well. I think it works at every kind of cellular level and spiritual level and every aspect. So yeah.
Right. I think gratitude is really important for regeneration too. I think gratitude for life. Sometimes when we go through really hard things and then we get to the other end of it, we can be really grateful. Yeah, if we have time, I'll share a story about that. But does anybody else have stories?
I have a quick story, actually, just about gratitude. There was one day in particular that, you know, I was reflecting on, well, have I been grateful? And so I took the day to actually just say thank you to anything and everything that was happening, whether it was, you know, just even the smallest things, you know, like thank you for my breath, thank you for this pot that I have, you know, like just whatever it was. And I feel like just that within that day, I felt just a lot of shifts and changes, you know.
Exactly.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it too. I mean, you can see that I love plants, and I mean, this maiden here is just so beautiful. I mean, I just go up to my plants and just go, "You're so beautiful. How did you get to be so beautiful?" I just feel, and I mean, I could just feel my heart almost exploding. It's just amazing. And I think that we get so used to our environments that we really stop looking at things. And it's so important to really look at things. And I think that helps us with our own restoration.
I want to share something quick, but I'm taking care of a garden with my partner, and this is regenerative every day. It's a miracle every day. It's beautiful to just walk in the garden every morning, and also to share vegetables and what we have with our neighbors. I think this is the most amazing, one of the most amazing experience. It's very small, but it is really very big and makes a difference. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that. Just taking care of the garden.
A beautiful story. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
could you turn off the share screen, and then there we go.
Yeah.
I also have one that is just happened to me because I got COVID a few weeks ago, and I think my way of healing and regenerating, maybe the word that came to me was gratitude, like very straightforward. And I was completely sick and brainless somehow, but gratitude came very straight. And by feeling gratitude, I felt that I was including the virus in me, in myself, and letting it pass through, and just being in harmony with whatever I was living, and being grateful for being alive, still being alive. And every day I was just doing this kind of exercise that Toll was telling us, especially sick, of saying thank you and having gratitude for the most simple things. And I truly believe that this helped me to heal and to regenerate myself. This is when you are sick and then you are feeling better, I think you are regenerating. And the other vision that I got when I was in gratitude, it is this energy of that comes from the center of the planet. So we are all part of the same energy. And I was just embodying this, saying it is just all about being grateful with this that we are. We are kind of a miracle around walking miracles. And why not to be grateful of one more day as in general?
I just so glad that you have that experience, and that image is so powerful, Hugo. I just wanted to comment that I think one of our Western orientations around death is not recognizing it when it's there. And I was involved in a shamanic healing exercise a couple of months ago, and I was surprised that the first imagery that came was one of completion. And I thought, why am I beginning with completion? And I recognized that I have for 30 years kept going on from chapter to chapter to chapter in my life story without ever closing the previous chapter. It's like sitting on a screen with open files, all open, as if they're all in play, and never actually closing any one of those tabs because, hey, I might want to go back to that and it will be immediately available. And so my journeying has been around closing those cycles so that they can then give the energy to where I am now. So it was kind of an interesting experience for me.
Wow.
Love. Did somebody start to say something? No. Yeah, respect. So I guess, does anybody have any other stories they want to share?
I guess I could say something. I'm trying to connect what's just happened to our theme more directly. We put our beloved dog, 12 and a half years, down on Saturday. It was interesting in another call, and death has been showing up for like a week or two in all these different calls I'm on, and the acceptance of death, the sickness in Western dominant culture of not acknowledging death and understanding that it's part of life. So somehow that was preparing me also for the choice of whether to do like major surgery on him to try to give him another year or two. And we decided not to. And the thought that his body is a site for much more life now in the ground in our yard was part of that. But also at the spiritual level, certainly the themes that Tal was talking about of gratitude you know, the preciousness of life came up, and I thought about, you know, my mother-in-law is 101. My brother-in-law is out visiting, you know, to see her now. She's still, you know, she's still with us and to a large degree, but for who knows how long. Both my parents are in their 80s. You know, these aren't uncommon experiences, of course, but I felt like Trevor was giving us some message about how to learn to embrace death, and you know, it was quite beautiful saying goodbye to him. It's terribly sad, of course, and we miss him. It's like a huge hole in the family. But I do have an experience of how that can be regenerative in this moment, as well as this connecting. I think there's something just really interesting about how it's showing up thematically. I put in the chat too. This was on a call, I think yesterday, with Vanessa Andreotti. She was talking about hospicing the old paradigm, and which is a common phrase I've, you know, seen, been around for many, many years. But I hadn't really taken it, you know, in its true meaning. You know, when you hospice something, you ease its passing and you celebrate it, right? And that's not our, for most of us on this side of the, you know, of the paradigm shift spectrum, who desperately want the old one to die. You know, we're trying to kill the fucker, not you know, ease its passing. And yet, of course, there's something really troubling about that, and it's not working very well in certain respects, right? And that if we can accept that this old system is dying and help it to die a good death, including the ways in which it's in us, in all of us, that's a much more regenerative stance to take than one of just flat out resistance. Not that resistance isn't important and beautiful, especially when it's done with love. And I think we saw that in places like Standing Rock, but so often it's not, right? So often it's fueled in anger and othering. So I'll complete my thoughts there. Thanks.
And thank you for sharing your story. Any other thoughts? If not, I will share our screen again.
Nan, I have something to add.
Sure.
So I think I'm just trying to remember the questions because there have been so many great remarks, but I think this past year has been a year of regeneration for me, not least because I discovered the GRC and all of you, but also I was already sort of in this mode anyway, but which is what I would call fallowing mode or resting mode, like just trying to slow down and be more present to my life and more, you know, just not be in such a rush. So I've been on that trajectory for a while, but this past year really punctuated that for me because obviously, you know, the constriction of time and space. And it just felt, I don't know, it just felt so regenerative. I feel so just alive from the rest and the tending of myself and my environment, that I'm nervous about how that's all going to dissolve going forward.
I suppose each of us needs to remember that and not get carried away by the wave of the masses.
Yeah, I think
care.
it's a practice, right? And we have to, I think a lot of people are feeling that this moment of the pause was in some ways this huge gift. And how do we hold on to that gift and not get carried away? I think of rivers and like how easy it is to get swept away. And I've been thinking in terms of floating lately, like what would my life be like if I did more floating and less, you know, kind of frantic paddling. And I will enjoy it a whole lot more. Floating is really fun.
I can just mention here, I'm in a point in my life where I'm starting to float a little bit. I left I left a pretty high level position recently and moved to the Netherlands. And I am floating. I'm trying to figure out what the next step is and, regenerate. And I would say, Christina, for me, it's more difficult. I think I'm used to the fast paced and really having a plan. And so now just challenging myself to let things unfold a bit easier.
Yes.
In 2010, I walked out of my life on the Camino de Santiago, walking out the death of my husband, and ended up finding a ruin on the path and regenerating it into a hostel and a farm. And I want to talk about floating because I went from a really fast-paced career to making beds and farming and taking care of pilgrims in a way that I hadn't even taken care of my children. Cleaning and cooking and doing all of those things. And I think that because I gave myself permission that this was a completely different life and I didn't have any expectations on how I would show up, except to be in each moment, in each conversation, as each pilgrim walked in, I relaxed from the necessity to be something or do something. I was just literally present in the moment. And I think that when we give ourselves permission to be in those moments, then all of a sudden they flood us with all of this newness and capacities that I never even knew I had. I never even knew I could farm in the way I farmed. And if I studied it, I don't think I would have done it. It was being in the moment with giving myself permission to just be on the land, listening to the land and listening to the people coming into my life. And so floating is a wonderful thing, and giving ourselves permission to float and be in the moment, I think, is part of it.
Beautiful story. Well, maybe I'll move on to Biominga and then we can try the wheels. Ugo, would you suggest that I play the little video?
I think is one of the best ways that you have produced to tell the story in a short period of time, and it is full of insight. So yes.
Okie dokie. Let me know when you see the screen.
You see the screen?
Okay.
We asked the question, how does nature evolve? What are the mechanisms that actually make that happen? And are there times when organisms evolve really quickly? Normally we think of evolution as happening over a long period, but there are times, in fact, when evolution does happen quickly. In what context does that happen? Under what circumstances? What are the accelerating factors in evolution to cause rapid change? How does nature respond to rapid change with resilience? We're living in a time unprecedented in human history with seemingly insurmountable challenges. More than ever, we need to speed up solutions. If we could apply accelerating factors of evolution to innovation and problem solving, what might that look like? How might we use nature strategies to accelerate innovation while building resilience? A team was born from a group of individuals with diverse backgrounds and disciplines: business, engineering, biology, and design. This diversity of perspectives, years of development and iteration, has led to a robust model, a framework for solving the world's biggest challenges based on 3.8 billion years of nature's R&D. We call ourselves Biominga. The meaning comes from two words. Bio means life, and Minga, a collective action coming together for the greater good. What are the components that come together and mingle to create evolution? In looking for answers, we have found three elements necessary for evolution to be context, recipe, and chance. Context is the place where organisms reside and operate, the ecosystems, the surrounding components that influence them. Recipe is the cellular makeup of the organism, which includes DNA, RNA, traits that have been passed on through inherited epigenetic switches. Chance represents those unprecedented things we don't really foresee. At times it's a connector linking events and organisms together. We don't really know what's going to happen when something intersects with something else. Chaos theory can also be interjected here as well. We next look at how elements play on each other, how they intersect and overlap. When context and recipe overlap, we get behavior. Behaviors are responses occurring over time, and often organisms are hardwired to act in certain ways. These actions can be internal as well as external. When context and chance overlap, disturbance flares up. These are chance events, dynamic non-equilibrium like hurricanes, drought, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, climate change, disease. They are biotic or abiotic events that challenge life's adaptability. When chance and recipe overlap, mutations may occur. Mutations can be caused by chance or chaos events that happen when DNA has mistakes in copying or is compromised by external influences. They are opportunities for new behaviors to arise, for new adaptations to disturbance. And based on their context, they will be valuable, neutral, or detrimental in promoting the proliferation of the species. So now, further honing on the mechanism of evolution, we have behavior, disturbance, and mutation. Each has a set of accelerating factors in which evolution can happen more rapidly. By looking at these accelerating factors and extrapolating their deep principles, going from biology to design, we have come up with strategies for problem solving, accelerating humans' ability to innovate. By using nature's time-tested strategies that have kept species going for billions of years, the accolades couldn't be better. Survival of the species proves the deep principles actually work. This gives us a new lens in which to view challenges on a personal, corporate, communal, and global levels. Wheels of innovation are a way of putting this evolutionary model into practice with revolutionary results. Joined by Aminga as we embark on a new meme, enlightening, inspiring, biomimetic thinking, fostering life-centered design and accelerated innovation.
Anybody have any questions so far?
Very nice.
Quick question here. How long did this process take to develop?
Years. Yeah, you know, we started it in grad school, 4 of us. And we started with the question, how might we accelerate innovation? And then we looked at evolution to show us. And then I had realized that there's times when evolution happens really quickly. And so to figure out what all those were and how they fit into the categories and what the categories should be, just, you know, was reading all the literature and going through things. And so we came up with 20 accelerating factors. And each one of those wheels, I think 2 have 6 and 1 have 8 accelerating factors. And regeneration is one of them, which is why Ugo wanted me to sort of focus on that one. But, you know, it's a work in process still, because we thought that chance was really big, but I've been studying quantum physics and now I think it's probably chaos theory. I didn't want to put that in because a lot of people don't know what chaos theory is or really understand it. But I suppose, you know, in understanding evolution, there's now something called directed evolution, where a mutation, when a species is in do or die, they can do something on the cellular level to cause a mutation. So, you know, Darwin didn't have all the tools that we have now to figure those things out. But yeah, it took quite a while. And then the wheels, I made them, I've been working on them for years as a 3D, it's plexiglass. But manufacturing is expensive. So Ugo kind of pushed to say, you know, do it in a digital form. So now it's in a digital form, anybody can do it.
Could
So
you
I
say
can,
what an application of this model would look like? I don't know. It's very interesting. So what happens with the model?
so yeah, so we can try it out. So you would ask a question, and so be thinking of some questions as I pull this up. It would be an innovation question. If all else fails, it can be how could I be more resilient? Or how can my organization be more resilient? That's always a good one. It would not be a yes or a no question. So then when you spin the wheels, then the wheels are a Venn diagram, and where the three symbols come up in the center, the symbols stand for the accelerating factors. And so then the biological story will come up, and then the innovation principle that you apply to your question. So maybe I can pull up the site and then just show you, it'll make more sense when you see it.
Nan, I have just a question to dig a little bit on this intersection of chance and recipe, because this has been like the natural selection theory from 19th century, which is valid in a specific context of industrial revolution. But recently, especially the last 20 years, epigenetics has shown a lot of things, and I think that one of the things that that is in that intersection is more about the emergence of consciousness, or the emergence of you know, how to decide what is going to change from the recipe, and how to do it. For example, things like adopted children developing genetic illnesses from their adoptive parents, or things like that, that we cannot, it is kind of, you know, like maybe the center is this consciousness, but this interaction between chance and it is more like you said, the chaos, the chaotic experience. It will go towards something different. Like I feel that this recipe is quite flexible, and it is quite, you know, like it's enlightening many things, but at the same time it's kind of there is a flow of information there that we don't understand completely. And chance is like, for example, if we will see Chernobyl, what is going on in this area now, we can find mushrooms that are actually feeding on radiation. They right. learned from Chernobyl how to feed on radiation. So this kind of, you know, that it is chance, but at the same time it's like a, no, it's not, you know, like it's not this
no, I mean, I totally
mutations and things like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
so I think I mentioned last time that I've been studying quantum physics because I'm really trying to understand this. And boy, I mean, I could talk a whole hour just on that, on my thoughts about what you're saying. It's probably too much to get involved with now, but I'll just say that chance is not really the right word, in my opinion, and that. So all this space around us, we think of it as empty, but it's probably filled with information. And this is just sort of my thought. So when your vibration, your personal vibration allows you to access this information that's sort of out here. And yeah, this will better not go down this rabbit hole because we won't get to finish, but maybe we can have another conversation about this because it's absolutely fascinating. And I've been working on this theory, and I've been working with some quantum physicists with it. And so I have a picture in my mind of what's going on.
That could be great, Nan, but I think that I want just to pull the attention on that, because that's a very mainstream tale that we all have about mutations, about this randomness on we don't know how this is going to happen, that's going to change, we don't have any control on that. And I think that for evolution in social systems, we really need to understand that we have a huge power on that point. And the observer and the consciousness that it is affecting how to change this recipe and how to affect our own biology is kind of a mix of will and consciousness, and a bigger consciousness that it is already there, and that this collective intelligence, we can align with it. Shamans in Mexico call it intent. So when we can align ourselves with the intent of the evolutionary path of something, of Mother Earth, we are actually evolving in a way that we are not controlling. It is not controlled by our recipes, but it is not chance either. And I think that it is kind of our challenge of align our consciousness of what Mother Earth is telling us at this precise moment of time of our evolution, that it is super powerful. So I just wanted to bring that because it's actually the way that all these oracles functions, or any oracle function, and the way that our consciousness interact with the evolution. So that will be great if we talk about it.
And epigenetics, recipe includes epigenetics. So epigenetics does not change DNA, but it changes the way it's expressed. So you can have twins, one may get cancer and one may not, but it's an epigenetic change based on diet and thought and all kinds of things. So let me do a screen share to get to the site. So the site is, you have to find it on my screen, biominga.com. Oops. Sorry, I'm doing some research and I've got a lot on my screen. Here we go. So when you come to the site, this little so evolution equals innovation. And then if you scroll down, if you wanted to look at that video again, it would be under more video. There's another little video down here that's sort of like a trailer. But to play the wheels, you click on Let's Play. I'm not sure what's happening. Oh, I think my connection is being really slow. There we go. So to play the wheels, oh no, doesn't really need me to sign on. Hugo, do you have yours up? I don't even remember what my password is. So you'll get this thing, this screen there. Great. Perfect. So you have to sign up for it, and then the subscription, if you want to subscribe to it, is $20 a year, and there's 266 possibilities, and I'll be adding more to it. So does anybody have a question that they want to ask, or should we just start out with a resilient question?
Nan, could you remind me what were the elements in the equation that gave us mutation?
So the
I got the first two, but I missed that one.
Oh, say that again.
You said context plus recipes generates behavior, context plus chance generates disturbance, and something plus something generates mutation.
Oh yeah, behavior. So where behavior and mutation come together, where chance and recipe come together, you get mutation.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah, and where recipe and context come together, you get behavior.
Yep.
And then context and chance is disturbance. So the three wheels stand for behavior, disturbance, and mutation. The green one is behavior, mutation is the yellow one, and the orange one is disturbance.
Great.
So anybody have a question that you want to try?
Christina.
Well,
So I have a question. I mean, my question is, I don't know, it's a very small question. So I don't know if that's, I have this new material I want to work with, I want to be creative with and make art. And so how do I want to just input on that. Here's my algae.
Nice.
So what's the creative potential of this material? That's what I want to know.
Trying to think of how we could frame that question so it would work. So maybe about the process of figuring that out. That might be a question we could try. So Ugo, do you want to spin the wheel? So to spin the wheels, you just use your cursor or your finger, depending on what your device that you're on. It's a Venn diagram, so where the three come together in the center are the three symbols that we'll be looking at.
This is amazing.
Resource. So the three accelerating factors are resource management. External influence and do or die. So if you click on the card, it will flip over. How might we reformulate and stagger resources for resiliency? The hero is the kangaroo. The life principle is use feedback loops, be energy and resource efficient. Biological story, kangaroos can suckle two joeys at different developmental stages with milk formulas of different nutritional content. The mother can keep the younger joey's growth in suspension while giving attention and energy to the older joey. Most kangaroo species can harbor partly developed embryo, keeping it in a state of suspended development, and then go into active gestation when the older joey leaves the pouch. The innovation principle that you would apply to your question, ability to nurture different developmental stages at the same time with appropriate resource allocation allows one project to simmer on hold while energy goes into the development of another. When space and resources are available, the simmering project is ready to be awakened and take off. So the little jingle to help remember this: when projects compete, let one sleep, reformulate resources from energy sources. Does anything pop into mind for you about your question?
Well, it does, because in my art practice, I always have a number of sort of complementary competing materials projects. There's always stuff on the hop and new ideas. And the fact that this new material like showed up in my world recently, and it is part of this same story of the art I'm making, and also different and new. And so this idea of like having some pieces of my work kind of hibernate for a little bit, so that I can, bring kind of attention and suckle the new idea, and that they aren't in competition, that they do complement each other and will speak to each other, maybe not this week, but in the future. That's a really relevant idea. Yeah.
Great. External influence. How might we use external factors to accelerate innovation? The hero organism is a pale grass blue butterfly, and reshuffle information is the life principle. Radiation that leaked from Fukushima nuclear plant following the 2011 tsunami caused mutations in butterflies, including stunted wings and dented eyes. Mutations in parents' genetic material were passed on to the next generation. Abnormalities increased from 12% the first generation to 18% in the second and 34% in the third. Mutations can lead to extinction if they are not beneficial, or they can occasionally be positive if they lead to resilience, to finding a new ecological niche. So the principle to apply to the question, changes in quote DNA can happen very quickly when exposed to intense disruptive external factors. Changes can lead to negative or positive innovation and can directly affect the system in which they inhabit and become habitual. Disruptive factors are extreme hackers. External disruption, innovation, eruption. Can you think of a way to apply that to your question?
Well, I have a lot of external disruption right now. I've got a book coming out in July, as some of you know, on the climate change in the ocean. And so my little friend here is symbolic, symbolic of that. I've never seen a green tide like the one that's out in front of my house right now. So I don't know what that indicates about, you know, weather changes or anything. And also the external disruptions. Yeah, it makes me sort of think about this kind of old paradigm, new paradigm, and like, you know, very much the sort of like promoting your book thing is like a whole kind of energy that I'm not super excited about. I'm excited about the conversations and the people I'll meet in the process. So I don't know, but I guess my hope and trust is that that the people I meet in the process and the artwork in the book really, you know, that it all ties together, and that the external disruptions I can channel them for good. I don't know.
It could be that this new resource that you have is a product of climate change. And that would be something to research. But if it were, I mean, like maybe you can make something out of it that you can wear as you're promoting your book. And you'd be able to tell a story, you know, and that we will have different resources. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that die. There's going to be a lot of really big changes. And so how can we use those new resources for the good?
Because I'm fundamentally a textile artist, and so this stuff appeals to me as a textile and a paper. Yeah. So when it's dry, it becomes paper, and when it's wet, it's this kind of cloth. And so I do think of it in those terms, and that would be totally amazing to make clothing out of it.
Well, Paul Stemmons, you know, the mushroom guy, has a hat that he always wears, and it's made out of mushrooms.
Lovely. What's his name?
Oh, Paul, Stemats.
You know what? I just got a hit actually while you were speaking, Christina, that possibly the mutation is your attitude towards selling books, and that really what is being asked of you is to accept it as a new texture of communication to what you're doing. So it was more of a hit around attitudinal mutation that then can be embraced in a different way, that gives you the lift off to seeing how you're bringing this wealth of knowledge to the world and seeing your role in bringing that in a different way. That's the hit I got.
That's awesome, Leslie. I love that.
Thank you. Yes. Sometimes I need a little attitude adjustment.
last one is do or die. This is in disturbance. How might we find resilience under adverse conditions? The hero organism is the fire ant, and the life principle is integrate the unexpected. Ha ha. That would be unexpected to use that as a textile, wouldn't it? When flooding occurs, fire ants self-organize into a superstructure waterproof raft. Clinging to the neighboring ant with mandibles and legs, squeezing air bubbles together, the group can seemingly defy the laws of physics and stay afloat. If submerged, air bubbles pop them right back to the surface. The hive can float for weeks, with each ant changing positions so all can survive and form a new hive when high and dry. Organisms with similar DNA are prone to high levels of cooperation. Form an unsinkable self-organizing system resilient to disturbance by using adaptable multifunctional components and strategies. Optimizing local resources. Flexible and adaptability are gained from a number of connected modules as long as the connection is strong with the shared goal. When conditions create the deadly unthinkable, commitment to whole makes the unit unsinkable.
Well, I think more generally about like GRC, like I feel like, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I feel like I've you know, found a life raft here, and folks who are in this kind of building a raft metaphor, which is just lovely.
Nice. Does anyone have anything to add or comments, or do we want to try another question? Beautiful.
Thank you. I think it's, well, I really appreciate the work that you have behind and how this has been helpful for everyone just to have some biology. And I really would like to thank you for sharing your knowledge, and also thank Melina that even though that she's sick, and we hope that you get well better soon, Melina. And I'm happy to see Christina that is feeling better. So thank you everyone. We are having another 15 minutes, which some of the people are leaving now because of the sharp hour, and then we have another extra 15 minutes for those who want to stay around, and feel free to ask Nan or to ask some biology, or because what I believed is that if we could have this conversation around regeneration, we'll be vibrating a little bit more in the same frequency and understanding how does nature regenerate, and getting a little bit deeper from the last session and this one, how does nature evolve and innovates. And we are all part of this innovation. We are all part of this collective. We, as a species, we have this collective advantage. And all the things that I've learned from Nan and from our group working together in this, I have applied into all of the tools like 7 Vortex, also Virtual Gaia, and all of each of them has been informed by all of this. And for example, one of the strategies is also around information management. How do we need to manage better information and knowledge so we can move forward and as a species? So it's very beautiful. So please feel free, if someone is around, Leon that is also around, there is another biomimicry professional. So we are lucky enough to have some biomimics around, and lucky enough to have regenerators around. So thank you for holding this space.
I do have a question actually, and it relates to the theme of pollution we were talking about earlier in the month, and it's just the simple question of what does pollution mean in a biomimicry context, or in a in the context of nature? Does it exist?
You're referring to the algae?
No, I'm just
No.
in general, the concept of pollution, like what in natural systems.
So without being a biologist, I can give you the short answer. Pollution, it is a human invention.
That's right.
This is what we are
Nature
adding to the
doesn't
world right now.
Nature doesn't have pollution. If we're not on the planet, there wouldn't be pollution.
Depends on the substance, though, right?
Yeah.
Nature's produced large amounts of CO2 in the past with volcanic eruptions, melting methane clathrates and things, right? So some things we're considering pollution. There's precedent for plastic, though, or some of these other, Teflon, things that don't biodegrade, that have no natural analogs. That's a different thing.
But that also then makes us, it fundamentally separates us from nature, right? We're no longer of nature if we are the polluter, right? If we have done.
I won't push it that far. I think that one way to say it is, I don't know, if there is not resilience, for example, to process poo in a savanna, because we lost the beetles and the bacteria and whatever, and there is nobody who will process it. Poo itself will pollute the savanna, okay, because it's a huge concentration of several kind of substances, and they will heat and they will do its thing. Now, what nature does is that it will close the cycle. It will just go, and it is like a resource, exactly what you are seeing in front of your window, of a huge amount of algae, and you are seeing it as a resource. What can I do with this? This is huge, and this is not, this is a disequilibrium. So one species will go and try to do something with that resource to solve the disequilibrium, to bring back an homeostatic balance. And it is important to think about homeostasis, because equilibrium is not a line, a straight line. It is a wave of goes and downs and up and downs. And that is, this is what our Western mindset is not used to see nature and humanity in this kind of cycle. So if we zoom out the the pollution that human being has been doing to the planet, we can see, okay, now we have lots of things, enough of resources just to cycle it back, So I think that we cannot just cut ourselves from nature because we are polluting something. I think that this is something that I really ask everyone to be very careful about, because the illusion of the separation is what creates that high amount of pollution, that high amount of non-homeostatic dynamics. So when we think ourselves, and that's, I think, the exercise you are doing right now, Christina, is to think yourself as part of the planet, of the cycle. So you are seeing something as a resource, which is amazing, and let's say that the solving of that technological issue of using that resource, we should be going into the biotechnological information and specific information on how to use algae, and there are lots of information about that already. So how we can see ourselves as part of the solution as well. I will turn the question more like that, not as the source of a problem, but how we can put ourselves in a solution mode, let's say, or more than the solution mode, is like a living systems mode. We are part of what's going to happen after the now point. So if we go towards, okay, let's do it as living systems, how they do it. So like that's why I think that going too far on that affirmation, it is kind of too far, because it's more like a turning a little bit our understanding of who we are in relationship with the planet.
And Melina, I will say that also something that I learned from biomimicry is how to push our designs into a more natural way. So for example, using life-friendly chemistry in nature, you see that it is being used mainly for elements, not just all the periodic table. And this is what causes imbalances. And of course, there have been processes of mega extinction, but also the things that we see in nature, they break down the products into benign constituents. And this is something that we are making it slower because we are part of nature. But so it seems like our chemistry is kind of primitive in the way that happens in nature. So I'm getting to understand that this is the regenerative gap that we need to complete. So we have a big opportunity on being more and better. So when in our last conversation in biomimicry with Dana, she was saying that some mining companies are seeing as an opportunity to restore and even decolonize some places. So this is what I saw as a regenerative gap, because then we have a big opportunity to improve our design. We have a big opportunity to create solutions, and this is a time. We are still alive. If we are not there in the game, then if the species is not there anymore, then we are out of the game. And that's why I explained last time also about it is all about the survival of the next generation as well. So I think if we set up our vibrations and our mindset or intentions into how to solve all these issues and not just pointing out the problems and blaming humanity because of what we are doing, but creating these critical connections towards solutions could be interesting as an evolutionary strategy in terms of collective advantage.
I think just to add to this line of thought, I think pollution really depends on the context. You know, if you're, for example, a plant growing next to a coffee plant and it's dropping coffee beans on you and that caffeine is inhibiting your growth, then you'll consider that pollution, right? So I think it's based on what frame you're looking for. And what I hear from Melina is kind of like expanding that frame and seeing that, wait, this is actually a resource. We do use coffee to drink instead of, we're not plants. So we use it in a different format. And we were talking about the funguses absorbing the radiation before, all of these organisms are continually evolving. And as our biochemical output and pollution evolves, then nature is going to find some sort of way to find that equilibrium again, to degrade those plastics. And that may take thousands of years, but if we're part of that process and we see it as a potential resource, then we can reframe the situation, because nature in general, whenever it spits out something ends up taking it in, right? So if we continue that kind of train of thought and that value, like invasive species, like that is just a concept that we can actually benefit from. If this species is growing here and we take this species and use it for either food production or for restoration or for something else, there's a reason it's growing there, and we see it in that way, it is no longer an invasive species. It is some sort of resource that can then be used and applied in a way that could be economically viable, right? So I think that's that's my line of thought, at least.
Yeah, and I would like to just add a little subtlety of this discussion, is that if we start to see ourselves as living systems, we can go with the solution kind mindset. But there is also a threshold. I mean, there is like this limit of the planet or the resiliency in ecosystems, or the psychological capacity to absorb poverty or abuse or whatever. There are limits, and I think that the important part of the cognitive biology and seeing ourselves as biology beings is that we can anticipate also this threshold, and we can stand for we are not going that way. Like we are not participating in that thing. This is enough. You know, there is also this important capability of we are not participating in that way. We are participating in this way, and we are not accepting that. And I think that this is a very important thing. And this is in social sciences, people call it indignation, like to be just, you know, like standing for something. I am in Colombia right now, and we are having a huge social strike and a police repression, a huge one. Like we are at the doors or something super strong. Big changes gonna happen here. And something that people and youth people are saying is that they are not talking for left-handed positions or right-handed positions. They are talking for consciousness. They are talking for saying this is no more of this and this is no more of that. Okay, so, and that is super important as humans, as a species, because we have been toughing a lot of abuses during the history. We have, I don't know, 10,000 years of abuses, of war. You know, before the matriarchal society, we didn't have this. And we have 10,000 years of war. Like, people, come on, there is a point where we have to say, like, we don't want this anymore. And that changes the intention of humanity, that changes the morphogenetics fields of what we are intending to be in this planet. So both things, it seems that they need to be together. Like we are going to act as living systems, and we are saying we are not doing this anymore. We are putting a limit, a very clear, categoric, based on the trust of our real power, which is to be what we are, following our heart and completely aligned with Mother Earth's intention.
Thank you, Melina. And just to give Nan the last word on her presentation, I think, and from that we can just leave, and really thank you everyone for being here. I think it's a crucial conversation for our time, and the time is now. And whether we are 10, 20, I think this is already affecting the morphic field that humanity holds. So let's just vibrate in that. And please, Nan, could you close this session?
Just thank everybody for showing up and for thinking about this important topic.
Thank you, Michelle,
Thank
Christina.
you.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody. What a great session.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go play with some seaweed now.
Thank you, Nan. We
Thank
have
you.
to talk much more. Love it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Gracias.
Bye.